All right, RYLEE KNOX, thanks for being here, man. I very much appreciate your time. I'm excited to learn all about you and have a conversation.
Thanks for having me, Eric. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so I mean, we were kind of very briefly talking because what I've learned is just to hit the record button because I love kind of the pre-post show conversations, but sometimes like you catch some really good stuff you wish you had recorded. So we're just kind of jumping in here. So RYLEE, if you could kind of give us your background, man, where are you from, and then what are you doing now? What led you to that?
Sure. My background. I was born in 1996. Um, High school, middle school, college. I went to Maine Maritime Academy and studied marine systems engineering. So I guess I'll start at, I was in high school. I was good at math and science. Didn't have a lot of direction for my life. Um, my mother was at a place in her career where she was very much hitting the corporate ceiling because she didn't have a college degree. So that was there's a lot of emphasis put on getting a college degree, and I was the first in my family to do that. So I went to college and studied engineering. I don't think I asked myself a lot of critical questions that would have potentially given me more clarity around what types of career would have been better for me. But met my wife in college. She was not in college, but I was in college. And we got married 1 week, 2 weeks after graduation. So
Nice.
married my wife in 2018. And that's pretty much the secret to my success. So everything's been perfect since then. Not true. But and that's, I think, one of the most important things to get right in life is
Yeah, no doubt.
to be with the right partner. So, and
No
then
doubts.
worked for the Department of Defense for a couple of years as a nuclear test engineer. In 2019, we got pregnant, and I was driving to work one day. So I lived 109 miles from where I worked. So my commute was about an hour and 45 minutes, and I had to be at the shipyard sometimes at like 5 o'clock. So I was on the road. It was 3:15, 3:30 in the morning, and I fell asleep at the wheel, which unfortunately was not the first time that it happened. It was kind of a frequent occurrence in my life during that season, and had this big, crazy spin out situation on the highway. There was a tractor trailer truck. I did not crash. I did not get hurt. But it was enough to startle me and cause me to think about a lot of different things in my life. This is kind of the first time I've been in one of these falling asleep at the wheel situations with these fresh thoughts of I'm going to be a father, I'm going to be a husband. What does that mean? And I couldn't shake it. I wasn't passionate about what I was doing. My work-life balance wasn't great. So I drafted a really lengthy email to my wife that I must have proofread 150 times. And I still have it today. We look at it relatively frequently, and all the reasons I was going to leave my safe, stable W-2 government job that I had been preparing myself for my entire life up until this point, and go into real estate investing and real estate agency full time. So I made that leap in 2019. We started buying investment properties aggressively. Today, our owned portfolio consists of 70 units. Doing my first syndication project, which is a 12-unit syndication project. And yeah, I live and breathe real estate in my professional life. And then in my personal life, I am an adventurer at heart. I love to explore. We just got back from Mount Rainier, did Mount Rainier in August. Ton of fun.
Nice.
So that's a little bit about me.
And there's lots to unpack there, obviously. I mean, there's a lot of history in anyone's life, but that scary moment in your life where it kind of shook you, right? Like, how did you, I guess, first of all, how did your wife receive the email? I mean, was she like, I get it? Or was she like, whoa, we're about to have a kid here, right? Is the timing right where she was pregnant and you're wanting to quit your job?
Yeah, she was pregnant. I was wanting to leave my job. And It's funny. I'm a mathematician, right? I enjoy math and numbers. So I had this spreadsheet with all of our income and all of our expenses, and I would tweak it, and I would cancel a subscription here and move this over there, and say, okay, if we spend $15 less on groceries, we'll be able to pay all our bills based on my wife's nursing income and the 2 rental properties that we owned at the time. I put a lot of thought into that email because I thought, admittedly, that what I was about to do was insane. And I hit send right before I left work. And I drove home, and all the way home, I'm sweating, right? I am sweating. This is not going to go over. And admittedly, like, we had a couple of rental properties, but money was tight. Like, we didn't have much to spare. And I got home and very timidly asked her, because she didn't bring it up, right? And I figured she doesn't check her email that frequently, so I very timidly asked her. I said, "Did you get the email?" Right? And she's like, "Yeah, I think it's awesome. I'm super excited. You're gonna crush it." And I'm like, "Babe, did you read the part in the email where I told you that there's a statistic that at the time I had read that the National Association of Realtors put out that said that 70% of real estate agents that were licensed under 2 years were making less than $10,000 after taxes and expenses." It's like, did you read that part, babe? I want to make sure you caught that, right? Did you read the part about where, we were going to need to be committed to me producing $0 in income for the next 12 months, potentially? And she said, "Yeah, I read that, but that doesn't apply." "What do you mean that doesn't apply?" And she said, "You've never been average any time ever in your life. You've never been average. You've never done anything at an average level. So why would now all of a sudden the statistic of people who are average apply to you? Why are you worried about it?" And that was like, that was confirmation. That was freedom, right? That was everything I needed to believe in myself, because she believed in me first. And if you knew my wife, she's not a person that speaks strongly very often about a lot of things. Unlike me, I'm a person who speaks strongly all the time about everything. And she spoke so strongly and with so much confidence that it really gave me wings. And that was a big moment for our marriage.
Oh man, that's so cool. Yeah, isn't it funny? Like, I'm kind of the same way. Like, if I have some validation from someone I really love or trust, or both, like my wife, it's like rocket fuel, like,
Yeah.
you can do it. And it's like, sometimes you just need that exterior influence just to say, yeah, go for it. I believe in you. I know you're going to do well, and all this stuff. And obviously you guys have. So let's talk about what happened shortly after. I mean, so now with this confirmation, I assume you quit, obviously.
Yeah.
What was that process? I assume still scary. And then let's continue the story forward. After that, how did you start acquiring? Because if someone's listening, let's see, how did you have money to do that? So we can kind of dive into that stuff too.
Yeah. So several things happened, actually. So I mentioned we were pregnant. I gave my 2-week notice, and my last day of employment was Friday, September 13th, 2019.
Friday the 13th, man.
I know.
Dun, dun, dun. Quitting your job.
Wednesday, September 11th, 2019, my wife miscarried the baby.
Oh, I'm so sorry, man.
And it was, obviously a lot of people have been through miscarriages. It's a very legitimate, super sad, emotional experience, physical and emotional. And I wasn't there with my wife in her time of need. And that was really, really tough for me. I was on a government, I was on a military base. I didn't have my phone. There was no way to reach me, right? If you're in these certain areas of military bases, specifically that are dealing with nuclear submarines, there's no cell phones. So, because apparently the Chinese can track, your location and figure out the layout of the submarine. So anyway, I wasn't there. and she went through that alone. And I'm thinking to myself, we made all of these plans predicated on the fact that we're going to have a family, we're pregnant, there's a baby on the way. Do these plans still apply? Like, so what do I do? Is this still the right choice? And I'm wanting to talk to my wife, Emily, about this. And I know it's not the right time. Like, it's not the right time to be talking business, right? She's mourning, she's crying herself to sleep. I'm crying myself to sleep. It was a sad time, but here we are, T minus 48 hours from a major change in employment. And I ended up bringing it up to her, and we spoke about it, and she was still 100%. Nope, you made this decision. This is what your heart wants to do. This is what we're going to do. So what did that look like? I left my job on Friday. Random fact, I was 23 years old with severe back pain. So severe, I had to get out of the car 2 or 3 times on my way to work and stretch. I'd seen doctors, my chiropractor, my PCP, and it wasn't good. And there was no real injury that caused it. On my way to work on Friday, September 13th, I got out of the car 3 times to stretch. On my way home from work, I had no back pain, and I've never had back pain since that day.
Was it stress induced, maybe?
Is that God healing me through, moving me to the right place in my life? Is that the removal of a stress-induced painful situation? I think I choose to believe a little bit of both. But absolutely, there was a very physical response in my body to the situation that I was in. So
very cool. I'm a man of faith myself, and so it's not beyond, in my opinion, beyond belief to say, yeah. I mean, I think God played a role in all of this, right? So
yeah, absolutely.
You look back and you never know what you don't know, and so yeah. So who am I to say for sure, right? I mean, that's the definition of faith, is we just kind of believe and not really know. And that's really cool. I mean, do what?
I always tell people that it's almost impossible to see the hand of God in the present moment, but it's almost impossible to miss the hand of God looking back.
No, that's actually a cool statement, because it's so true. Like, in the moment, you're like, what is happening? Good or bad?
Right. Right. Like, what is happening?
Yeah. And then looking back, you can say, oh, actually, wow, it seemed like there was someone or something bigger at play, and I just didn't know. So that's a really cool saying. Well, so cool. Let's fast forward a little bit. I mean, again, like, super sorry for your loss. I mean, it's obviously a very, very challenging time. And congrats on what we could describe as a potential miracle. I mean, maybe it's stress induced, who knows? To your point, maybe a little bit of both. Yeah. But that's really neat. I mean, you experienced something like life-changing in itself, just pain-wise. I mean,
huge.
Yeah. And then you kind of jump out of, so then are you like, okay, now I'm gonna be a realtor? I mean,
so how did that transition go? Not have money, right?
Yeah.
But I started my real estate course. The moment I got home from work, I logged in my computer, started my real estate course.
Nice. That sounds like something I would do, man. It's like identical to me, but like, all right, next chapter.
Well, yeah, like, look, I had made this promise to my wife, and we were going to leave this and start this. I'm starting now. Yeah. That was on a Friday. It was 52 hours of coursework. By noontime Monday, I was done the course and had applied to take my tests. And, a couple weeks later, I had my real estate license. And I knew a fair amount about real estate as a real estate investor, but I didn't know much about real estate agency. So I sat my butt in an office for 40 hours a week and made phone calls and learned from the people around me. The first office I worked with first brokerage I worked with was phenomenal. The people there were incredible, good people, learned a ton from them. And my goal was to replace my W-2 income, right? To replace my income from the Department of Defense. And I was able to do that in year 1. So that was really exciting. And start buying some assets. So, which now is challenging to do, by the way.
It is
because I don't have a
challenging.
job
Yeah.
anymore. Don't have a W-2 employment, and I've been licensed as a real estate agent for less than 2 years. So it caused some bumps for me on the financing side.
Yeah, and that's true for myself too. I mean, I've sort of slowed down my W-2 work as well. It becomes more and more challenging to find loans. Now, I will say in larger loans, it's less complicated because they see this more often, but especially in residential, it becomes very difficult. So, well, cool. Congratulations on replacing your income within a year. So let's move forward to your assets. And then this is kind of what I wanted to ask, is like, if you're listening, like, well, okay, RYLEE quit his job. Let's say he was probably slow to make his money, made his money towards the second half of that first year. Then you start buying assets, and it sounds like you have a whole lot now. So how did you begin to acquire? What does that look like? And then how did you continue, right? Because most people tend to run out of money. Most people tend to run out of their own money, I'll say. So I'm interested to hear your story there.
Yeah. So this is a question that bankers ask me all the time. Like, how are you buying assets? Where's your money coming from? Right. So we bought our first property with an FHA loan and $6,000 that was borrowed from my wife's 401k. When we closed on that property in 2017, we had $40 in the bank. Then while I was working at the shipyard and my wife was working as a nurse, we took us 18 months, Dave Ramsey style, pinching pennies, saving money on groceries and gas, to save $22,000 to put a 11% down on our second asset, which was owner occupied 4-unit. From there on out, we've primarily until 2023 used 20% down commercial loans from local banks to purchase our investment properties. And those have really come from relationships. When you're, 24 years old, 25 years old, and you're buying 3 or 4 multifamily assets a year, there's red flags that kind of go off in the bank's underwriting system, right? How's he growing so fast? Where's the money coming from? So 2 places that the money came from. The first is quite literally our assets. Kiyosaki said once, and I'm going to butcher this, but he basically has said that you've made it when your houses buy you houses and your cash flow buys you cash flow, right? I don't want to say we've made it after 2 houses, but that's really where the down payment money for the next few properties came from, was cash flow from the first 2. We are in Maine, which is one part of the country where you can still find a few really good cash flow rental properties, at least until this podcast airs, and then that'll be all over. So we bought good properties. We bought good properties. They were cash flow positive. They didn't take a lot of CapEx in the first 2 years, and we were able to save money that way. My wife was working as a nurse, and that's where some of our down payment money come from. So really boring kind of beginning of the story, right? Like, that's the sad truth of real estate investing that nobody really wants to hear, is hey, I have stopped going out to eat, saved money on gas and groceries, worked harder at my job, and that's where my money came from. Like, it doesn't sell a lot of books,
that's the truth. I tell people this all the time. It is a get rich slow game, and it is super boring. And what I'm hearing you say is living below your means, which in our American culture is shockingly hard, because there's always a friend with a boat, a friend with a nice mountain bike, in my case, a friend with, like a new truck, or the house that has new countertop. So it's like, it's always keeping up with the Jones, and it's always the new thing. And so it's like, that's an extremely, extremely powerful skill to live below your means. It's a skill
that everyone needs regardless of income. If you're a doctor making $750,000 a year, but you're spending $850,000 a year, you're not generating wealth. So I think it's such an important skill. It's a skill for everyone to have, and it's a skill that you need to maintain even as you grow in your finances. This is the crazy part. I had 32 units. Our net worth was a couple $1 million. I am driving to my properties in a $3,000 Toyota Prius with a snowblower in the back of it, with a ratchet strap holding the hatchback down, right? In winter snowstorms, knocking on my tenants' doors so they can move their BMWs out of the driveway so that I can snowblow, right? Like, this is kind of the dichotomy of the decision-making process. So that was kind of one area where our funds, our capital came from, was saving money from our jobs. The second area, and the fun area, is we found a win-win solution for some people that we loved. So my grandfather has been telling people, 15 years ago, he met a man in an airport or at a coffee shop that was telling him that he had sold his house and got to continue to live there, right? So this, and I don't know whether this man had sold his house on a reverse mortgage or with a life tenancy or life estate, but this guy had made this comment in passing to my grandfather. And I don't know how in depth that conversation went, but for the last 10 years, my grandfather has been telling everyone, the house is for sale, just I come with it. You can buy my house, but I come with it, right? And around 2019, 2020, my grandfather had recently retired and was really, my grandparents were really trying to figure out what their next move in life was going to be. They owned their house free and clear, but they're on Social Security. And although they owned their house, there were things like the roof and the septic and the taxes and the insurance that they were really just struggling to keep up with, right? So they had made the offer to 2 or 3 of their children, you know, hey, buy the house, I come with it, but you can buy the house, like we'll give you a sweet deal on the house, right? And nobody wanted to take them up on that, right? What are we going to do with that? Like, we're going to pay for this house and you're going to keep living in it? Like, how are we going to do that, right? Finally, my wife and I flew down to Florida, and I just asked my grandfather, like, what are you looking to accomplish? What are you really trying to do?
That's a super powerful question. So we'll come back to that. But yeah, keep going. Yeah.
And my grandparents are not shoot for the moon, fly private jets type of people. He said, I've always wanted to snowbird in Florida. And this was their first season snowbirding in Florida as a renter. And that's when we went to visit them. So I've always wanted to snowbird in Florida. We're getting old. We have arthritis. Maine winters are tough on us. We want to be in Florida in the winter. We have a friend in a community that has a home for sale, a mobile home for sale right next to them for $35,000. We'd really like to be able to buy that. And I need a new car, so that's going to be $5,000. And I need a place to live for the rest of my life. And I talked to my wife about it, and the next day I said, done. We'll buy the house for $40,000 and we'll provide you with a place to live for the rest of your life. And you can buy this place in Florida and you can buy a new car. And they were ecstatic. They were so happy. We removed the burden of home ownership for them here in Maine. They no longer had to worry about that septic system and that roof and those taxes and the insurance costs, right? Because they were looking very seriously at reverse mortgages. And if you know anything about reverse mortgages, some of those products can be really tough on the people who use them. So we essentially did a private reverse mortgage, right? They quite literally trusted us with most of their net worth. And so we did buy their house for $40,000. It was worth about $200,000. So we leveraged that equity and we went out and bought a few more multifamily properties. Now, some people will get excited when they hear that story because it's exciting to think that you can solve somebody's problem and come out ahead by $100,000 or more. Some people will hear that story and say, see, told you, I can't do what he did because he got lucky. He had some grandparents give him $100,000. And I would just tell people, we were able to take advantage of that situation for one reason, and that's because we had a business and a proven track record of success, and we could do something with the money. The reason that nobody else wanted to buy their home from them is because nobody else wanted the liability, right? It was going to be a negative cash flow liability to whoever bought the property. But I knew that I could go take the equity and purchase enough cash flow to offset ownership of that home that they were living in, and then a little bit more. So I think they say that luck is, I don't know, how do they say that? Luck is,
Like, you make your own luck. Yeah.
basically, yeah. Luck falls into the arms of those who are prepared to take advantage of it. And we were prepared to find a win-win situation. Today, we live in a much nicer home. My grandparents live in this much nicer home with us. You know, we've taken my grandmother on a round the country road trip. She saw all kinds of things all over the country she'd never been able to see ever before. And next month, we're taking her to Europe for a month. So my grandparents have come out really good in this deal. And my wife and I have come out really good in this deal. We are all living a better quality of life than we would have had we not struck that deal a couple of years ago. Now, I'll also take this opportunity to say that my wife and I do not have 70 units and the net worth that we do today and the cash flow that we do today because my grandparents struck this deal with us. That deal accelerated the path that we were already on by maybe 14 to 18 months, but we were already on the path. And I'm thankful for that deal, but you don't have to have a deal like that to generate wealth, build passive income, buy real estate. But if you'll keep your eyes and ears open to the problems that other people are trying to solve, you might just have a solution for someone.
Yeah, there's so much in there that I really, really love. A couple things like, so, you know, my wife and I'll just say we had a situation where we bought a sixplex from an owner who owned it free and clear. He had inherited it and we paid him a pretty fair market value for it. But I saw a different value than he saw. Like, he had a unit that was down because it was filled with stuff. He was under market rented, all this stuff, right? And he thought what he was asking, the number he was asking was $1 million for a sixplex. And he thought what he was asking was an astronomical number. Like, he thought I was just going to like laugh and walk away. Turns out he didn't really know the market, right? I knew that was a fairly good deal, not a great deal, a good deal, but with the vision of, okay, we can bring rents up as these units turn, and I've got an extra unit you're not renting out. This is a pretty great deal. And he wanted out, right? He was so tired. He wanted out. Here's the funny thing about that story is the same story to you that accelerated our path for sure. And some people, to your point, might say, well, you got lucky. You found that person to sell it to you. But here's the interesting thing about that is I asked 300-400 people before that to sell me their house and received no from everyone else, which I was fine with. I'm just okay hearing no. Found that one deal that, to your point, like accelerated us a little bit because we ended up selling that deal and grabbing some equity and then now doing what we're doing. So I feel like a lot of investors have that one, I don't say lucky break because that's not what it is, but maybe have one thing where, to your point, a naysayer might say, dude, you just got lucky. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah, there is some luck involved, probably. More likely, it's just the ability to ask. And the question you asked your grandparents is, what do you want out of this? Is the exact question I hear over and over and over from investors is, take the time to hear what people are, what their side of the story is.
Don't assume that you know what someone else wants out of their life.
Yeah,
let
totally.
them tell you.
Yeah.
Let them tell you.
Yeah, and if what they tell you like aligns with what you need or want to do, then it's great. It's a win-win. So I think, like, I mean, I love the second part of the story too, that you've continued to take care of your grandparents. Because yeah, there's probably again some naysayers out there like, oh, you took advantage of your grandparents. It's like, well, you know what? Actually, that's what they wanted. You took the time to listen, and now you've continued to take care of them in a way that has probably, you know, provided a better way of life for them too. So like, very, very cool second part of that story as well. Yeah. It's interesting too, like, you know, I'll just say his name, my partner, Shane Brooks, has a similar story where like he was just asking people if they would finance it. If, what do they want on this deal? He bought a duplex where like, it was crazy. The owner financed the whole shebang, but he was able to like put all of the loan on one side of the property. And then he could go out and get a bank loan against the other property, which had zero leverage, which is really, really smart, right? It's risky. It was his own money, so he was risking his own money, but like very, very smart idea, which panned out, right? And then it just accelerated him. He's now leap year. I mean, he's amazing, smart person. But it's kind of those like, oh, here's an idea, and are you okay with that? And how can I help you? And that person who sold on the property is like, sweet, yeah, I just want the cash flow,
Yeah.
So I don't want to take the story away from you, but it's a common thread is like, first of all, you took the time to listen. Second of all, it was a win-win for everybody. And like, yes, sure, it's lucky that you had a grandparent, but like, it could have been a woman down the street. It could have been a man next street over. Like,
and I didn't have to be. The other thing is, I didn't have to be the person to solve that problem for them. They had actually offered their problem up to other people, and those people didn't take the opportunity to solve the problem and make a profit there. So today, I'm also, in addition to my real estate agency business, I run a wholesaling business.
Okay.
And what I love about the wholesaling business is, as opposed to kind of on the way on market transactions work, you have a buyer, you got a real estate agent, you got another real estate agent, then you got a seller, right? There's this big game of telephone, and sometimes it's tough to get stuff done. I love the wholesaling business because I get to do just that. I get to get on the same side of the table as sellers and say, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to do in the next 5 years? What are you trying to do this year? What tax situation are you trying to solve? And you just get to solve people's problems with them, for them. And I think the important thing is not forcing it. I think so many times why people struggle to find win-win solutions is because they don't take enough at-bats. We send 8,000 pieces of direct mail marketing every month to do 2 to 5 transactions, right? 7,000 of those people never even pick up the phone and call us. They don't have a problem that they need us to solve, right? And 100, 200 of those people do pick up the phone and call us. They do have a problem that they'd like us to solve. Most of the time, we don't have a solution for them. It's not a good match. But in 3 or 4 situations a month, somebody will say, listen, I've got a problem. I'm closing on another house, or I want to buy this car. I've got this other situation, and I, could really use money next Friday. And I'm willing to sell you the house at a 20% discount to make that happen. I don't want to fix the roof. I've got this situation or that situation. And if you'll just listen to people, most of the deals that we do, the seller is super aware of the fact that the price they're getting for their property is leaving some meat on the bone. But for one reason or another, they're super happy to use our services as opposed to going out and listing that property. So
yeah, it's not, it's interesting. Like, again, it's not that uncommon for lots of things. Like, people pay for convenience in all ways. Really what they're doing is leaving some money on the table for an extreme convenience, right? Meaning you guys can close quickly. You guys could, like, just all those things that would just be easy. They don't have to list it and wait for this and tours and clean their house and all this stuff. It's like, nope, we'll buy it and we'll close the next days, and it is what it is to us, right? Like, we're taking on some risk as well. So, it's just not that uncommon to like fast food, even for that matter, like just to pay for an extreme convenience.
I love breaking down the wholesale business model for people, because especially, and I'm treading in rough water here. National Association of Realtors does not like wholesalers. There's a pretty obvious reason for that, and that's because it's a direct competition to professional real estate agents, right? It's another alternative way to dispose of an asset. And so wholesaling sometimes gets this really bad rap in the real estate industry for a lot of reasons. One reason is because there are bad actors playing that game. There's bad actors in a lot of games, but there's bad actors in wholesaling because too many gurus trying to sell books have told people for a really long time that you can do it with no money down, and this is what you do if you have no money. I don't necessarily agree with that philosophy, but wholesaling is a word that I use in the context of real estate that all kinds of businesses use in the context of their business, right? Eric, how expensive is beef at the grocery store? Pound of beef.
It depends on what beef, but
sure. Let's say
let's just say $5 a pound. I mean, whatever.
Let's say $5 a pound, right?
Yeah.
You know how cheap you can buy beef? You can buy beef for 50 cents a pound if you buy a cow, right? Like that's, so you have to understand, right? There's somebody who raises cows and sells those cows for 50 cents a pound to a meat processing facility, right? A butcher. That butcher will cut up those cows and sell that beef for $2 a pound to a grocery store. That grocery store, but that won't come in these cute little packages that shows you your steak, right? No, that comes in a big giant box of all these steaks put together. So that grocery store will take those out, put them in their own little packages, put those on the store for you, all ready to go on your grill, and you'll pay $9 a pound for those same cuts of steak, right? So wholesaling exists in all industries. There's always more meat on the bone. It's just how far do you want to take a particular product down the process of getting to the consumer, right?
Yeah, no, and even here's the word wholesale. Like you could say get at wholesale price, or like buy in bulk, which is essentially wholesaling. I mean, so yeah, I mean, I completely agree, and I think you're right. There is some bad actors, and that's true for anything, though. That's true for any industry. It's like there's some bad actors in syndication. I mean, there are some people who have done syndication to create a Ponzi scheme. I mean, let's just call it what it is. So like in any industry, there's some people who kind of will kind of create a bad reputation for the rest of the good people. And so, I don't know you that well, but I believe that you're not one of those, right? So
I appreciate that.
I think I can confidently say that. All right, RYLEE, we're running out of time a little bit here, so we're going to switch a little bit. I'm going to ask you a series of questions. So I kind of I teed it up a little bit for you at the beginning, but what books are you reading, or what books can you recommend?
Yeah. So, man, the Bible, I do a lot of coaching on wealth building, and it's funny because the books that make the New York Times bestsellers list, right, are all these new books, and they have these new ideas, and everybody has new ideas. King Solomon wrote in the Bible that there's nothing new under the sun, right? And these basic principles of stewardship and investing have been around as old as time. So that's actually where I grab a lot of my knowledge. The Richest Man in Babylon was given to me by my brother-in-law, which is basically a Bible-based stewardship book on building wealth that has helped me a lot. I read Scott Trench's
I have that book
for
over here.
Life. Set for Life.
I have it like 3 feet from me. Yeah, great book.
That's the book I give away the most frequently. I mean, if you're looking to get started, I just think it lays out so clearly. It's never too late to start building wealth, but man, when you're young, when you're between the ages of 18 and 25, you can make a few key decisions that can either really set you up for success, or you're going to spend 10 years digging yourself out from the kind of consequences of those decisions. So I think what Scott Trench's book so clearly lays out is the path that home ownership can take you down, the path that renting can take you down, the path that house hacking can take you down, and what those look like in dollars and cents over the next few decades. That he's got one image in there. It's a chart that just lays that out so clearly. I think that it really helped me make our first decision to house hack.
And I posted a video on social media last week that I created more than a year ago, but I just recycled it basically and posted it. Essentially what I said though is step 1 is get your financial house in order. And what I meant by that was exactly what you're describing, is like, get yourself out of credit card debt. So let's go back to, like, really quickly, I don't want to go too far in this, but let's go back to that story with the grandparents. So let's say that you bought this house and then you go to the bank and say, okay, I'm ready to cash out, refinance, basically, which I'm sure is what you did, right? So the bank says, okay, cool, it's worth 200 grand. We'll give you 80%. Here's your 160. You pay off your grandparents and you've got 120 in profit. I mean, that's not probably exactly how it happened, but
Pretty darn close.
okay. So what you could have done was you could have gone and bought like a Raptor, right?
A new truck.
Like you could have had a really fast truck or like whatever, right? And created yourself a liability. But now hearing what you did, you actually went and bought assets, cash flowing assets at that. Those, to your point, just key differences are so valuable. And the funny thing is, like, yes, you're sacrificing that fast truck to drive around your Prius, but like in the future, those assets are going to buy so much more for not only yourself, but for generations to come. Like, that's such a good book recommendation. Yeah. And I have it literally 3 feet from me, just because I think it's such a good base layer. So really cool recommendation. All right. Next question I have is like, what's a mistake? And I've learned to like get away from that word, but like, what's a learning thing that you wouldn't repeat?
Yeah. What wouldn't I repeat? Man, this is tough. I'm gonna go to my education soapbox, if you will, for 30 seconds.
I might end up disagreeing with you, and I think that's good because I find good conversation and disagreement. But I'll let you go first.
Yeah. I think it's important to know yourself really well. I think it's important to do the work to learn yourself.
That I agree with.
If in your heart of hearts you want to perform life extending surgery on horses, be a veterinarian, you need to go to med school. Like that's the path, right? Veterinarian school, right? Like you got to go to school to do that. If you want to be a NASCAR driver, a bachelor's degree in exercise science may not be that useful to you, right? So it's a lot to ask an 18, 19, 20-year-old kid to be really introspective about what they want to do with their life. And I would just tell people to take the time to answer that question, whether you're 18 or 19 and trying to go to college, or you're 40 and trying to figure out what's next. Staying on the same path that you're on because you're on it is not a good enough reason to stay on the path that you're on once you realize it's not the path you want to be on. Like, I hate this sunken cost fallacy. I've got 8 years into this business, so I need to stay in this business. Well, if it's not a good business, get out of it, right? Mm-hmm. So don't let mistakes that you made in the past hold you captive in the present. I guess that's, yeah.
Oh man. Okay. So I was wrong. I agree with everything you said, but I think so. One thing I think, like, maybe I'm crazy, but first of all, education's gotten really expensive. So there is kind of this lately, the last, say, 8 to 10 to 5 years time period where people are now saying, wow, maybe college isn't worth it. And there is some absolute truth to that. To your point, like, if you want to do something that doesn't require college education, that for sure. Yeah, go for it. So what I will say, for example, for me is, I never wanted to be an engineer. I never had it in my heart. I never really liked it. I'll just say it. Mm-hmm. It's fine. And I like doing certain projects like septic systems. I honestly really enjoy them. So I still do them to this day. But looking back, it was like, I was like you, I was good at math and science. So I was kind of like semi shoved into that. And then I was like, okay, well, I'm already down this path and let's go. Now, the flip side of that coin is college taught me to solve problems. It taught me to be really good at time, because I had jobs, and school was really hard for me. I mean, engineering school is really, really challenging for me. It isn't for everybody, but I had to spend a lot of time studying. And so it taught me that, like, time management, solving problems, working hard. Like, I learned to work hard in college. And so I would never take it back. The other thing is, like, it shoves you in this community of people your age, which I
Mm,
think is extremely, extremely valuable, in my opinion.
mm,
So I will say the college experience is really cool. Now, there's another path too. There's plenty of paths. Like,
yeah.
I took some time off and I did some mission work, and it's the same story. It was youth with a mission. So I was shoved in this group of people, young people who had like, kind of a same path, and it was amazing. So all that to say is, I don't subscribe to like, don't go to college. I don't subscribe to that.
Yeah.
People who are like successful be like, well, I'm just going to teach my son how to do my business. I'm like, I
What if
get
he's
the
going to do that
theory.
business, right? Yeah,
Right. And I get the theory. It's like, sure, you could save them 100 grand in debt potentially, but there is some huge, huge benefits. So that's my soapbox. But everything you said, I
yeah. No,
completely agree
I
with.
would just say that when I was in high school, the decision to go to college or not go to college was presented to me in a very binary way. Get a
Agreed.
college degree or be broke and struggling for the rest of your life. Those are my only two
So true,
options,
man. So true.
right?
Yeah.
And the reality is there's an infinite number of paths in life. Uh, don't be afraid to try a few of them, and don't be afraid to look around. And the other thing that the kind of the binary discussion around college is like, at 19 you either go to college or you don't. Well, there's another truth to that, which is at 29 you can either choose to go to college or not, or at 39 or at 49, right? 19 is not the only opportunity you'll ever have in your life to go to college. And there's not only one type of college. So
Yeah.
I'm
That's so true.
very pro education. I think I work harder today to educate myself than I ever did in college. I wouldn't say it's easier today too. College was very trying for me. On the same soapbox, I would just say, in anything that you do, either crush it or quit it. Like there's no time for milking it. So I knew my freshman year in college that I probably wasn't going to be an engineer for most of my life. Yet I made the decision to stay. And I gave it my all and did well while I was there. Right? I just don't think you benefit at all from doing anything poorly. So if you're going to do it poorly, just do something different. But if you're going to stay like people who are struggling in their marriage, right? If you're going to stay, crush it. Give it your best. Don't give anything in life a half-hearted effort.
Man, that's so good. Crush it or quit it. I mean, I think that's like the quote for this podcast is if you're going to go for it, go for it. And then I love what you were saying about like shifting gears too. Like there's a lot of courage in quitting something you've put a lot of time into. Like,
yeah, because you almost have to admit not a mistake, but you almost kind of have to. It feels like a failure sometimes.
yeah, I mean, I look back now and like I rarely use my engineering degree, and I rarely do engineering. I mean, I do, like I said, septics, that's it. And like some people would say, well, wow, there's a lot of waste of time and money. But actually it led me to where I am now. So I would never, ever take it back. I don't subscribe to that. But to your point, like you have to say, you know what? It's not my passion. And I didn't feel that strong about it. When I was at it, I was a good engineer. Like I did a good job. I always was like diligent, but wasn't my passion. So now moving to this, like in real estate's, I think both of ours, we can say like wholeheartedly, I love it. I mean, I love talking real estate, could talk forever. And that's the problem with this podcast is like, I could go on for so long, but let's move on. The final question is, what is your definition of success?
I spent a lot of time thinking about this. To me, the definition of success is to create a life that aligns with your values. I'll say that one more time. Just to create a life that aligns with your values. To live in alignment with your values is success to me. How much time do we got? We got 5 minutes?
We got 5 minutes. Yeah. The only reason normally I would just hang on forever. I just have another one right after this. So I'm sorry.
So we got 5 minutes. My wife had cancer before we got married. We knew that there was a very high likelihood that she was going to have cancer again. It just the type she had, high likelihood of recurrence. So we built our financial life for the scenario that my wife was going to be in the hospital, because I wanted, if and when my wife went to the hospital again and fought her round 2 with cancer, I wanted to be by her bedside, not at work trying to pay the mortgage. So that's why we made the decisions we made. My wife's first cancer was brain cancer. That was 10 years ago. In 2020, she got diagnosed with breast cancer. Couple weeks later, maybe a month later. No, I'm backwards here. 2020, we found out we were pregnant, which was exciting. A couple weeks later, we find out my wife has breast cancer. So big, complicated medical journey that resulted in my wife being in the hospital, getting chemotherapy treatments. And I was at all those appointments. And we were in a place that she was able to stop working when she needed to stop working. And there wasn't, I wasn't in a position where I needed to choose between putting food on the table and loving my wife. I got to live in accordance with my values. As a complication, my daughter, Aspen, was born 12 weeks premature. She spent the first 67 days of her life in the hospital during COVID. And I stopped working. My wife stopped working. Our entire world stopped. Food rotted in our refrigerator. Our car was left on the side of the road. And we spent 67 days holding our daughter in her time of need. And I choose to believe that a combination of our love and the hand of God willed her into existence. And that's what I'm the most proud of. It's one of the most proud of across everything in my life, is that when my family needed me, I was able to be there with them. And I was there with them. And that's super huge. And I know a lot of people in the audience might say, well, that's an obvious choice. I'd be there with them too. There were other people in that hospital with babies just as sick as ours. And they loved their family just as much as I love mine. But they had 2 children at home and 1 in the hospital, and a mortgage to pay and food to put on the table, and a job out of state. So they had to leave that hospital on Sunday afternoon and go work to put food on the table for their family, and come home Saturday morning and spend 24 hours with their family and then go back to work. I watched it break these folks. I watched them cry and see how hard this was. They didn't desire to be with their family any less than I desire to be with mine. Their reality was not in alignment with their values. Their reality was very different than what they valued. And I think that it gets promoted on social media a lot, like financial freedom, wealth building, drive cars, yachts, fly all over the world, it's beautiful, travel. All that stuff is true. But more than anything else, when life gets really, really, really bad or really, really, really hard, one of the things that comes with financial freedom or wealth is the ability to do what you need to do and be where your heart is, regardless of financial constraints.
Yeah. Wow. What a powerful story, man. Holy cow. And good on you. I mean, that's such a cool definition. And the thing is, like, lots of people can have a lot of assets, but not be able still in that position that you are. So thank you for sharing. I'm so glad you shared that. That's like incredible story. I mean, kind of gives me goosebumps. I'm so happy that your daughter's here with you.
Yeah, they're both healthy. They're both healthy. My daughter's 2.5. She's a blast. My wife is healthy. We are blessed. And lately I've been trying to stay away from that story because if we start in on that story earlier in the podcast, we don't get to talk about anything else.
Well, no, I'm glad you shared it though. I mean, because that's such a powerful thing, and that's a good, cool way to kind of wrap this up, so to speak. I mean, what a cool way to end. I mean, I want to hear more about it. So we'll have to schedule some more time to talk personally,
For sure.
but yeah, so let me ask the final question is, how can people reach you? How can they find out more about you and learn more about what you're doing?
Yeah, if you just go to RYLEEKNOX.com, that's a great place to find me. Or Riley Invests on Facebook or Instagram, Riley Knox on LinkedIn. Like, you can find me.
All right. Well, cool. Riley, thank you so much for your time, man. This has been incredible, incredible show. I mean, obviously there's just a lot to be learned, but I appreciate your story more than anything. And so thank you for taking the time to share it with us.
Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate it, Eric.